Good afternoon, as opposed to good morning. My name is Joe Stachler, and I am sitting in place for Chip Flory. He is in Florida. We are basically fresh back from Commodity Classic. NCAA brackets have been announced, and probably I should let you know that we are having a contest on Farm Journal. So if you go to agweb.com, there is a Bracket Busters challenge there. And first prize, I believe, is $1,000. I believe second prize maybe $500, and third prize is $250. And before I go too much further, let me also introduce our regular, Jim Wiesemeyer.
Can you use artificial intelligence for your guesses?
I don't know if how would they ever know? Sure. I think basically everybody is using artificial intelligence for their guesses.
Okay, well, it's good not to miss a Monday, even though we're on later. So we see Melody, hello, and Russell's on there. Yeah. We may as well go right to one of the questions already, because I'm glad we're getting them from Russell. What's our initial thoughts on Biden's $6.8 trillion budget proposal and the impacts on ag? Well, my initial proposal, most of the people, including myself partially, was saying it was dead on arrival. Because the House won't pass it, because the House is controlled by Republicans. But it does show you what Biden would want to do in his follow-up 2 years, and if he gets reelected. That's why it's not necessarily dead on arrival, because if Biden were to run and win reelection, and the Democrats control the House and the Senate, this is exactly what they would want to push through Congress. So I'm not going to dismiss this out of hand. But it does increase taxes far more than what the economy should bear. But this was mainly a political document, goading, if you will, the Republicans in trying to detail what they want to do to cut cost, at the same time protecting Social Security and Medicare. It looks like that's going to happen sometime in May. As far as the impacts on agriculture, the proposals by Biden and Vilsack really were not surprising in that they focused on climate change, climate smart programs. They talked a lot about the Farm Bill, even though Congress writes the Farm Bill, the administration does not. And they were very, spent a lot of words on conservation spending. So that's how it would impact agriculture, if it would ever come into fruition.
Did you notice anything specifically pertaining to agriculture? Anything that might be a non-starter or something that seems like it has a good chance of having bipartisan support?
Well, bipartisan support is spending some money in certain areas, defense, food and nutrition. But the non-starters would be all those, most of those taxes, especially capital gains taxes. That we really need to flesh it out a little bit more, Joe, because just by looking at the language of a rather significant increase in capital gains, that would not help anyone, and it would also affect most Americans, not those just making over $400,000. So to me, that's a non-starter. Most of the taxes are tax increases.
Mm-hmm. Let's swing back to Commodity Classic last week. Chip and I were there, of course, and so were a lot of people, including Secretary Vilsack.
Yeah, Vilsack has been giving a similar speech for the last month or so, and he may give it in Thursday when he appears before the Senate Ag Committee, his first time before the committee for this new Congress. And in that, Joe, he really wants to transform the ag sector. Yeah, even though the last 2 years have been the highest in farm income in the history of the country. He keeps saying that most farmers are not making money or are making money from off-farm income than from farming. Now, when you look at the business of agriculture, 15 to 20% of farmers produce about 85% of the production. I don't think he's talking about those producers. He's really talking about the 80 to 85% of the defined farmers who produce only around 15% of the production, but he wants to change it. And then he brought up former Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue under President Trump, and he said Perdue told farmers to get big or get out, but Vilsack stressed that we shouldn't miss the big picture, was his exact words. Is it get big or get out, or about creating opportunities? He called it a fundamental question. And that's where he's driving home. He keeps on saying there are other revenue streams that agriculture should go for, and that's when he blends in the climate smart programs, of which he's already tapped the Commodity Credit Corporation for a little over $3 billion. So he's not shying away from this. He keeps saying he wants a big change, and that would necessitate a farm bill rethink. So that's what I think he'll bring Thursday to the Ag Committee.
What else do you suppose that he's got in store for him in that conversation?
As far as what?
What else do you suppose is in store for that conversation with the Ag Committee?
Well, the Ag Committee does not like, they don't mind him tapping the Commodity Credit Corporation Charter Act, but not for the reasons that he used for the climate change programs. Because if you recall, Perdue tapped it when President Trump was president for some of the payments as a result of the trade war with China. So I think that could be brought up, and I don't know whether they're going to bring up the need for additional funding, but I think Vilsack will support keeping that around $20 billion in additional funding that Congress already approved last year and is now law. There's some Republicans who want to alter that, so I think you'll see a difference of opinion there. And as far as more funding for a farm bill, at the Commodity Classic, my good friend, Texas A&M University economist Dr. Bart Fisher told the audience there that he calculated a 10% increase, Joe, in reference prices would cost about $20 billion over 10 years, and a 20% increase would pencil out at more than $50 billion. So to increase those reference prices is going to need a chunk of new funding.
All right. Now, I want to welcome everyone who's just joining us. Thank you for being flexible with our schedule. Chip is on vacation this week, and I had a bunch of things to take care of this morning. So we wanted to still be able to do signal to noise for you, at least the live conversation. And so we decided to do it at 12 noon Central Time for today. Usually, we're on 8:15 to about 8:45 Central Time in the morning. I know a lot of you listen to the podcast, and in case you're wondering about how this works, we do this live and have some participants give us some questions. You can find us on the YouTube, Facebook, and pages for Farm Journal and AgriTalk's Facebook page. And there, if you had a question for us, you could certainly join in for the live conversation, or even afterwards, you can always leave a question on one of those platforms and we can get to it the following week, or just continue listening into the podcast. That would work fine as well. I see another question here. This is from Jared Liedberg. Or Liedberg. I'm sorry, Jared.
W-I-E. Liedberg.
Yeah,
Liedberg, okay. I'd say, because you pronounce, if it's correct German, you pronounce the second vowel.
And I should know that with my last name being Stachler, but I
What's the
could barely
latest
get
for the
through with
emergency?
English.
He
Yeah.
wants to know what's the latest for the emergency relief program on 2022 losses. I do too, Jared. The USDA has been very quiet because they're still seeing how the phase two of ERP for prior years unfolds, and they've just been hit with a lot of criticism. They haven't made many payments at all under phase two because, and a lot of under phase one, because it's just almost unworkable. So let's hope it changes for 2022. I'll be checking in to see what time frame that they'll announce. But at the Commodity Classic, USDA officials said they were woefully short of the funding needed for phase two. Well, it was USDA's estimates that told Congress last year how much they wanted. I think it was about $3.4 billion, if I'm right. But whatever the final tally was, it was way low. So I don't know whether that's going to have to be dealt with in a follow-on appropriations in this year's Congress or not. But we're kind of in flux right now on the ERP. ERP phase one was a very farmer-friendly program. Most farmers I've talked with really liked how it was easier to calculate. They got the money out right away, et cetera. And I think there's been over $7 billion released as a result of that program. That's all I know under ERP, but we'll keep checking.
All right. And I see also Austin Heiniger is asking about something that we certainly have on our docket of topics, and that's, unless you've already talked about it, what does the SVP, the bank situation, mean for the average person? Silicon Valley Bank situation mean for the average person? Now, Chip had a conversation last Friday with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net, and that's when everything started to break about this story. And one of the things he cautioned our listeners against was that U.S. ag should not be unconcerned by this. He's like, what if the average farmer or rancher or ag business person might be thinking, well, why should this concern me? That's a fairly big bank, he made the point to say, that owns a lot of smaller banks. And so it could have some sort of ripple effect. But as Austin's asking, what does it mean for the average person, at least?
Well, that's why you saw the President Biden has already made an address saying our banking system is safe, it's working. The Treasury Department of Federal Reserve announced several things Sunday and again today regarding, I don't know whether some people are calling it a bailout, but what I saw is they're trying to settle things down so there's not contagion, so it doesn't spread. There's never just one bank involved. We've already seen, I think, 3. But to me, there's some high anxiety moves that I think the Fed did, because it looks like they guaranteed $230 billion of uninsured deposits as well as insured deposits at that SVB Bank and Signature Bank. And Signature Bank got a lot into crypto. And I don't see that spreading, but let me put bottom line. It looks right now like the market is at least saying, okay, you have this under control for now. They're afraid of another shoe or two will fall. That's why you're seeing volatility in the financial markets today. But I just looked at the Fed funds futures, and they're now 80.5% for a 25 basis point increase in the Fed funds rate March 22nd, on the second day of the FOMC meeting later this month, and only 19.5% for no increase. Recall just last week that it was very close to being either a 25 or a 50 basis point increase in the Fed funds rate. And then you have Goldman Sachs, a reputable investment firm, saying today they don't think there'll be any increase in interest rates on March the 22nd. I just don't agree with that myself. The reason I don't agree is our inflation is still around 6%. The Fed usually likes the Fed funds rate at 2 percentage points above the inflation rate. So we've got a lot. This doesn't change the overall inflation situation in this country. So to me, if the Fed doesn't increase rates at all, they're even more nervous about this banking situation than some people think.
Mm-hmm. And then they had good jobs numbers last week too, didn't they?
It was a little bit for everybody on that. But this week, Joe, tomorrow, we're going to get some consumer price index. Wednesday, we're going to get producer price index. And those are going to be two key reports going into that FOMC meeting. But again, I want to take a hit at the Federal Reserve because I think it's one of the weakest Fed I've covered in decades because they got us into this pickle on inflation. They should have started increasing interest rates a year before they did. And recall that they and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen kept on calling inflation transitory when it wasn't. And now they're having to increase interest rates more, longer than what most people would have thought just a few months ago. And now with this latest banking hubbub, why wasn't there regulations in place in the monitoring end to catch those? This is what I think Congress is going to be delving into in the months ahead. Here we go again. This time it was not a small bank, but it wasn't these colossal banks that we've had before. This is not 2008, is what people keep telling me. But this was as a result of not good banking rules following, and the degree of uninsured borrowers that should have known what they were doing. And what's really got Washington in a kerfuffle, Joe, is that just hours before the announcement of help from the Fed, the bank in this case gave bonuses out to some of their officials. That won't hit the vast majority of Americans very well.
No. About the inaction from a year ago, have we talked about what any possible reasons for it? Was it just frozen into inaction, not knowing what to do when they're seeing the signs for inflation?
To be fair, I just think they believed that it wasn't. I think they really believed it was transitory. But I think in this case, the Treasury Secretary Yellen and Jerome J. Powell as Fed chair, I say in my speeches, frankly, I don't think they ever shopped for themselves. If they did, they would have seen those food prices not only go up, keep going up and staying up. If they would have filled their own, maybe they got EVs, but if they would have filled their own cars with gasoline, they would have seen the impact there. If they would have listened to the common person out there, they would have realized that costs were going up. So they were just out of touch.
Okay, because I was wondering also about the not raising interest rates for a year ago, simply because it'd be the unpopular thing to do as opposed to maybe the smart thing to do.
Well, I can see Yellen doing that as a political person in the Treasury Department, but I can't see the Fed doing that. But recall that Yellen was a Fed chairwoman before Jerome J. Powell. So I think she should have known better as well.
Okay.
So we're just even in agriculture, we're going to have higher interest rates by this time next year. You're going to have double-digit interest rates for operating loans. Prove me wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am.
Wow. Let's move on to WOTUS. We just had a rule.
Yeah, you had Yeah, you had a new rule by the administration late last year, sometime in December. And then you had the House last week approved a resolution that got some farm media all excited because they really put the kibosh on the new rule. But number one, the House didn't have the votes to override a threatened veto by President Biden, so it's going nowhere. And the Senate this week is going to vote on a similar resolution on the waters of the U.S. Even if it were to be approved, it doesn't take the 60 votes. It's just majority vote. It's going nowhere, Joe, because Biden said he would veto it. So that means that the real thing we're waiting for is the Supreme Court ruling on the waters of the U.S. And it's a controversial rule. We may not get that until May or June this year.
All right. I know that we are going to have Congressman Sam Graves back on AgriTalk very soon to get his perspective on that issue, as we have been for the past at least 2-3 years. Moving on, the Biden administration finally turning the corner on trade policy. What do you think about that?
Well, I think they could be. Our sources in the White House are whispering to us that a potential trade agreement with the United Kingdom could be coming yet this year, at least beginning talks. These things take a while, Joe. And Secretary Vilsack in Florida, it was interesting because he said that that we should really be discussing the enforcement of our existing trade agreements in order to support the eventual call for trade promotion, for renewing trade promotion authority in Congress. Now it's expired, and under TPA or fast track, that just allows Congress to vote on a new trade agreement without any amendment, so an up or down vote. So I think that's that's important. That Vilsack even mentioned the phrase "trade promotion authority." We haven't heard much out of trade policy from the Biden administration during the first 2 years, but we're starting to hear it. I think that's a good sign because agriculture needs market access, so we need new trade agreements, especially if we keep on getting into the negative foreign relations with one of our biggest customers, China.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if the Biden administration is turning a corner on trade, what about on energy and Alaska and oil?
Yeah, well, you're seeing the same thing. Biden is tracking in some cases to the middle. Oh, that's interesting. Going into 2024 possible reelection drive. Now, in the case of the energy, this is the Willow project in Alaska. And in fact, I think they announced it this morning officially. I want to see the language. I don't trust anybody. I want to see the language of their announcement. But I think it's been scaled back, but it's still a step in the right direction for producing our own oil. Now, at the same time, he's expanding the number of acres that you cannot produce or drill on. So it's kind of the carrot and the stick approach. But this is an announcement that's not going to get his environmental activists in the Democratic Party happy at all. But it shows to me that Biden continues to track toward the middle as he tries to get more balance coming into what appears to be a re-election race for 2024, Joe.
Mm-hmm. Just wanted to remind everyone out there who's joining us live that if you would like to ask a question, please do so in the comments section of whatever platform that you are joining us through, and we will try to get to it. I see that we missed a good point made by Gary Rasmussen about the issue with the
ESG.
Yeah.
The SFB. You can imagine a bank in California would be big in ESG, and in this case, they were. So yeah, this is a sensitive issue out there, and I think it's they'll never admit this. Probably another reason why they came to the assistance of him.
And Melody, at the beginning of the show, also had this observation. Lots of sulfur dioxide in northern hemisphere atmosphere due to volcanic activity.
Oh my goodness. I remember in the early days of Pro Farmer, this would be the 70s, by the way, writing volcanic stories of how it impacted the weather. So I'm going to, Melody, I'm going to go back to that research and see what, what are the impacts and on the degree of that volcanic activity. So look for that one.
I've heard a bit about the lack of sulfur in today's atmosphere, I guess you could say, for agriculture, and how the important role that it plays. And so maybe this could be helpful somehow too. I don't know about it. I don't know anything about it, but I hear things, and when it filters through my brain, especially some of the rules of how ag works and all that stuff, I'll just embarrass myself if I keep going further.
Before we go on, I want to give a shout out. I give a lot of speeches, as you know, Joe. I was in Oklahoma last week, I think it was. And Shelley Heinrich, she's the Southern Plains Regional Communications Manager. She's in Texas. And we were discussing cotton, of course. And I was telling her I like to wear cotton shirts rather than polyester shirts when I give speeches, but I've been having a hard time finding a shirt for me that's cool like polyester. And ever since I've been saying that, the cotton warehousemen have sent me some excellent shirts. And just this morning, here I get a package of 2 shirts from Shelley, and one with the USA that I can't wait to wear. Pima cotton. So it pays to talk to the cotton people. I mean, I'll pay for it if I have to, and they're really comfortable. I tried them on. So I'm telling you, I love the business of agriculture because they deliver.
Oh, that's very true too. Absolutely. Moving on, how about delivery of grain export pact? How's that for a segue? The deadline, March 18th.
Oh, you mean the Ukraine pack, the grain pack?
Yes.
Yeah, this is following the last time that it was the fits and starts for the renewal, Joe. It's following it to the T, where Putin says it's not working and it's favoring the Western nations and it's hurting the sanctions on Russia, etc. Then you get the United Nations, of course, who helped broker it, involved. Turkey issued some statements. The market is clearly signaling at this stage that they think it will be renewed. Ukraine wants to increase the number of ports allowed to transport, so that will be something to watch if that happens, Joe.
Okay.
And the deadline again, March the 18th. We'll probably go up right near it, 17th or 18th. So get ready for it. Another one, I got an email from a Signal to Noise listener in this case about egg prices. And I think you mentioned egg prices earlier. U.S. chicken producers want to do their part to bring down those soaring energy prices. And how does that get into policy? Well, they want to sell the 400 million surplus eggs to food producers. And you think, what, can't they do that now? No, they have to convince the Food and Drug Administration to alter the rule that prevents eggs laid by chickens in the meat industry to be used for human consumption. Now, that National Chicken Council trade group recently, I think last week, submitted a formal petition to the FDI asking officials to drop the rule passed in 2009 that keeps chicken producers from selling their excess eggs because they aren't refrigerated right away. So this is an interesting topic that I've been watching and will continue to report on.
Are those eggs that weren't refrigerated right away? Are those?
Yeah, I don't know how long they take to refrigerate them. That's one of the questions I've asked both USDA and FDA. So we're going to see. You want them to be good eggs. I would imagine they're still good, yes. But that's 400 million surplus eggs. You think that wouldn't help?
So who would those go to? Not people, right? Or
To
would
food
they?
producers.
Okay.
Yeah, because I buy blueberry muffins almost every week at Harris Teeter, my supermarket. It's owned by Kroger, and I had to skip buying them because they went up from $4, $3.99 a pack
Oh,
to $7.
yeah,
And I asked, and eggs was part of the reason.
yeah, sure. Um, Back to Secretary Vilsack. Did we talk about his use of the Commodity Credit Corp Charter
Yeah,
Act?
in a way, he wants to. He said in Florida that he wants to keep using the CCC. That's the Commodity Credit Corporation Charter Act. I think I've got his direct quote in here because I knew I wanted to talk about it. He said it's important for him to continue to have authority to tap that CCC Charter Act. He said that's USDA's line of credit at the Treasury because he said it would strengthen biosecurity. So that's an interesting phrase there. But I'll tell you, Republicans are going to propose restricting his flexibility in using the CCC, and Vilsack said that, quote, is a problem. And he also used the CCC to help poultry growers faced with avian influenza. And that's an email I get from a lot of poultry producers. What additional help will they get from the horrible situation called bird flu?
We have a comment from Rose Boy about Bitcoin. Do we?
Let me see what it says. While it may not be directly related, it does seem that Bitcoin has entered the cultural zeitgeist in a much larger way than in 2017. Blah, blah, blah. Bottom line, regardless of whether or not the conversation is a positive one, the attention that Bitcoin is getting is arguably positive under the trope no press. Uh, I'm at a loss to why Bitcoin is in a significant rally. So I don't know. It's about as unregulated of a market as you're ever going to get, and it will eventually be regulated. But let me just tell you, my only experience was a couple years with Bitcoin when I met two young Chinese individuals who were really good at trading Bitcoin, and they wanted me to trade, and I said no way. And they kept after me, and I said, okay, if you do the trading for me, I'll dabble into it. Long story short, that was those were the days when Bitcoin kept going up, up, and up, and it helped pay for my kitchen remodel. But I'll tell you, I had the foggiest idea how they were doing it when I watched them, and I said it was 4 times wilder than the Wild West. I left it and not going back.
Okay, I think I'll probably stay away as well. But who knows? We're watching CPI this week. Secretary Vilsack, Ag committee hearing, and so forth. What else are we watching for this
Well,
week?
I would say watch this situation with the banks. Let's just
Sure.
hope. I'm hoping that there's not contagion because it's an emotional issue.
Yeah, sure.
Whenever you have a run on bank, this was a classic run on a bank, and a lesson should have been learned by that bank, SVB, because they had the vast preponderance being uninsured loans. So they were vulnerable. So I think that's a policy initiative we're going to have to look into. But let's just hope it's just limited to a few. There could be one or two more, but the Fed and the Treasury Department and the White House, they really did in most cases, they did what they had to do to stem the high anxiety. And it looks like the markets are saying so far so good, but they're still. This was the SVB is the U.S.'s history's second largest bank collapse. So you can't say it doesn't mean much. That's big. So those are the items of importance this week, Joe. And then going into the March 22nd FOMC meeting to see whether or not the Fed will alter their viewpoint as a result of this banking situation. We're just going to let the numbers, tell us Tuesday and Wednesday.
Okay, very good. If you would like to read Jim's columns, go to tryprofarmer.com. This afternoon, AgriTalk will be hosted by Davis Michelson. That's our market show. And tomorrow morning, we'll have one of the pre-recorded shows that we did last week at Commodity Classic. Until then, thank you for watching for those signals.
Thank you.